Earlier this week, Rabbi Lorge and I were both at the Reform Rabbis Convention, the CCAR convention in Philadelphia. There was a good deal of talk about the upcoming Israeli elections. And a colleague shared with me that he had heard that Israelis were driving into Arab towns and busing Israeli Arabs to the polls. His daughter was living in Israel, so he called her. "Is it true that Jews are busing Israeli Arabs to the polls to vote?" he asked. "Dad," she replied, "I'm driving one of the buses." Well, you gotta love a democracy. Whatever your feelings about the results of the most recent elections in Israel, we should all feel proud that Israel is one of the only countries in the region with a true and open democracy. And this most recent elections elicited a huge turnout of both Israeli Jews and Arabs. My son's Hebrew teacher at Heschel did a 28-hour round trip to go home and vote. This is how much he cares. I think because we all care, we also felt concern and even anger over some of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's scorched earth campaign tactics, warning that Arabs were coming out in droves, and revoking his commitment to seeking a two-state solution, saying that if elected, there will be no Palestinian state. Many articles have been written already claiming that these statements directly contributed to a decisive victory for the Prime Minister, which is quite troubling. I think the final election results are a more complicated mix of forces. What I'd like to focus on tonight, though, is a lesson that our Torah portion can teach that offers some hope. Vayikra, the first parsha in the book of Leviticus, details the many different offerings and sacrifices we make to God. Rabbi Shai Held, in his weekly online drosh, drew my attention to a seemingly insignificant grammatical point regarding sin offerings. But I think they offer an important lesson this week about leadership and power. In chapter 4, there's a listing of many different people who might require a sin offering. And each introductory section has the same word, im, which means if in Hebrew. Im, the priest sins, if the priest sins, or if a person sins, or if the whole community of Israel sins. But one case begins differently with the Hebrew word asher, meaning when. When a nasi, a chieftain, sins. So why do you think the language changes? The Talmud explains that for a leader, it's not a matter of if, only when a leader of a community will sin. Leaders are bound to sin, sometimes out of pride and hubris, or the dangerous lures of power, or the things that they're driven to do or say in order to keep that power. Vayikra would say, sin is inevitable with leadership. But the consolation and hope that Vayikra offers is that asher, when a leader sins, there is something he can do. With sacrifice, with offerings, he can make up for that sin. We always have an opportunity for tshuva, for repair. I remain hopeful that many of the divisive and harsh words uttered in this campaign were sins of expediency and not the true direction of the next government. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu has already retracted his statement against his two-state solution on MSNBC, saying he still actually wants a two-state solution, he just doesn't think it will happen in his term. I don't know if that counts as an offering, but it's a start. Some sacrifices will clearly be needed in order to put together a coalition that will bring democracy and peace to all residents of Israel, all citizens. And this most recent strong showing from both major parties may even allow for a more centrist government that could truly move Israel forward. That might seem like a pipe dream, but David Ben-Gurion once said, in Israel, in order to be a realist, you must believe in miracles. So we will hope and pray for those miracles. We need it more than ever. But there's one other thing we can do as realists. We can actually vote. We can't vote in the Israeli elections, but we can vote for the Reform Artsa platform in the World Zionist Congress elections that are happening right now and for the next 40 days. We must send a strong message to Israeli leaders that Jews of the diaspora support values of religious pluralism, women's rights, and minority rights. Artsa, which is the Reform Zionist organization, supports all of these things. We will be sending you an email early in the coming week with a link to vote if you haven't done it already. It only takes 2 minutes and a $10 fee. Your vote will not only send a strong message to Israelis' leaders, but it will also directly result in millions of dollars of allocations each year to reform synagogues, kibbutzim, and the building of religious pluralism in Israel. So this can be our offering, our very small sacrifice as American Reform Jews to the democratic process in Israel. Vayikra, and God called. Let us all respond.